Thank you, Veronica. This is our pleasure to present this seminar series. Thank you for the kind invitation. Yes, so today we'll be talking about high-value manufacturing in the UK, case studies and focus groups insights. Luisa Watuco, I'm a senior lecturer in operations management. I work at the York Management School, University of York in the UK. So today's presentation will be divided in the following sections. First of all, I'll talk about the objectives of the project, followed by some key definitions of the high-value manufacturing. Then we continue with the case study results, and then we use focus group results as well to provide some wider range marking. And then finally, we conclude the presentation. So in the context of the UK as the ninth largest producer in the world and accounting for 3% of the global manufacturing output, we know the UK is facing some challenges in terms of dealing with several mega trends such as sustainability, aging population, increasing global competition, the departure from the European Union. So currently, organizations, especially manufacturing organizations, SMEs, are looking for ways to compete in this volatile environment. We propose that high-value manufacturing can be a way of competing or meeting the challenges, and that could help manufacturing organizations achieve their competitive advantage. So the objectives of the project were to carry out some case studies within the UK SMEs mainly, and we basically sent out a call based on the description by Livesey about the characteristics of high-value manufacturing organizations. So they were self-reported, either believing themselves being in high-value manufacturing or willing to make a transition to high-value manufacturing. We also set out to not just have an overview of the characteristics that make high-value manufacturing, but also the internal mechanisms that organizations have to have and the business processes they have to enable that high-value manufacturing achievement, as well as successful transitions to other high-value manufacturing propositions. And finally, to create some practical guidelines for organizations and to help them understand the current position and perhaps a future transition to another proposition of high-value manufacturing. So there's a definition here of value. So while value is actually quite a term which attracts a lot of attention from academic and practitioners alike, here's one definition about satisfying the customer expectation, but also at the same time taking into account the wealth of the organization. So there is the tension always between what the market requires and what actually the organization can provide with their own capabilities internally. So here's the value matrix that actually Veronica and co-workers developed a while ago, I believe in 2003. We have a value matrix with three main, what they call value disciplines, right? So we got product leaders, operational excellence, and customer intimacy. Against what they also called hard dimensions and soft dimensions. Now, the hard dimensions are in relation to the technical side, so more engineering and type of know-how, whereas soft dimension is more about the skills, perhaps the less tangible aspects of the organization. So by combining these two, what they call a value disciplines versus dimensions, so hard and soft, we have 6 high-value manufacturing propositions. So we got the innovators and the brand managers as part of the product leaders, for example, and the price minimizers and simplifiers as part of the operational excellence value discipline, as well as technological integrators and socializers as part of the customer intimacy value discipline. So what does the customer get when they are actually having an organization which is mainly an innovator, say, right? So the customer gets new products never seen before. Think about Apple, right? So organizations which are basically innovative and surprise the customer every time. And for example, in the case of brand managers, what the customer gets is to pay for a premium price for that, getting the status with the product. Think about Rolex or some very expensive car make that you might think of. So as an example of those. So each of these value propositions will have particular characteristics, and the customer gets different things from different value propositions. But what companies need to do in order to achieve what the customer wants is identified here. So, for example, for technological integrators in the customer intimacy discipline, the companies need to develop good understanding of customers' business products and processes, so the company can deliver efficient and effective customized products and services. So here the keyword is customization, but also is like a one-stop shop, so customers don't need to to go anywhere else but to have an integral solution. And in the Socialisors, value proposition is going beyond that in terms of providing a friendly and intimate customer service, having the extra provision of services and a very friendly, wrapping up in terms of the experience. So interpersonal service is key, for example. So organizations need to step up to these challenges. So in our data collection for the project, we wanted to compare basically what is different perceptions of high value manufacturing are, both at the strategic level and operational level. Because ideally, there should be a congruence between what the strategy says and what the actual organization does on the ground. And also, we have the term competencies here. Competencies in relation to the abilities of the organization to make something or to achieve something, but it has to be congruent to the strategic level and also to the operational level. Now, the methods that we used for the project were combined of case studies and focus groups. So case studies relying on interviews, which are semi-structured, carried out with managers of the organizations, but also backed up with observations from the shop floor as how things happen in practice, and as well as the collection of documents and historical data. We use also a questionnaire which was developed for a previous project by Martinez et al. And that was also the main method that we use for the focus group. So in terms of the length of the data collection, we had 3 days at each case study company, supported by historical data, as mentioned earlier, plus 1 day of the focus group. The data comprises of case studies. So for the case studies, we had to ask the organization to provide, if they have a handbook with vision, mission, values, if they had a business plan with business objectives, if they had a financial statement they could share with us, a list of key projects they were working on, key performance indicators that they were working towards, and some process mapping. Here's a list of typical people interviewed during the case studies. So range of personnel in terms of managerial positions in the organization, from management director to production supervisor to customer service manager. So it did cover as wide as possible in terms of the range and the different stages of the production system. As for the list of the companies that took part, again, there were, as we mentioned, self-reported high-value manufacturing organizations, so they believe they belong to that category. So we had 2 SMEs, HVM 1 and HVM 2, and a large organization, which was HVM3. The characteristics of each of those are given in this table. So the first one, HVM1, is a manufacturing organization which sells orthopedic implants. Mainly the main product was a cementless hip replacement. The main customers were in the UK and Europe. They have a new product development every 3 years and some improvements every 2 weeks. The main thing that characterized HVM1 was it was a charitable foundation, so every extra profit that they make, they were actually investing in the charitable foundation to do some more research and development on new materials for hip replacements, for example, or some other replacements. They also did other types of replacements like shoulder replacements and so on, or kneecap replacements. For HVM2, it was a small medium enterprise producing basically baths for disabled people, mainly. And again, the main market was in UK and Europe. They had a very good focus on innovation in a way, because they were investing quite a lot per project, so 34K per project, which was mainly down to grants they will apply for on a regular basis. And so they will introduce a product every half years or so. HVM2, a small medium enterprise with very good location in terms of the manufacturing, very good quality product. However, they were lacking a little bit of a strategic direction, but we'll look at that later on in the results. HVM3 was a large organization with basically manufacturing of exhaust systems for emission control, so for large vehicles such as truck, buses, and trains. They have two main types of products, the OEM and retrofit. Again, their major customers were in the UK and Europe. And they had also a new product development cycle. The way they measure here is in full-time equivalent man per year, and for the design as well. So we used a questionnaire, as I mentioned before, had been created previously by another project by Martinez et al., where we had basically the classifications for the organizations. So we have A, innovators, B, brand managers, C, price minimizers, D, simplifiers, E, technological integrators, and F, socializers. The questionnaire itself was divided into 3 parts. So the first part consists of questions on the internal view, and the questions were in relation to the key competencies like in the development of, and it could be, for example, quality products, standard functional products. And on the right-hand side, we had the levels of agreements that the managers will perceive the organization was at that level. So one was not applicable. If it was not applicable, it was selected there, or from low to medium, or medium to high to very high. So you have a Likert scale there. And then we have the external view, where we had the second part of the questionnaire was in relation to the competition of the organization. What is the main competitive advantage of the organization from the market perspective? So you have, is it competing on product innovation, on brand recognition, on price, on accessibility, total solutions, or interpersonal service? So these are clearly the value propositions that we mentioned earlier. And there's a code here from A to F, so they relate also to this as well. And then we have the third part, which was the operational view. The operational view is more in relation to the actual internal, how can the organizations can organize their own competencies and how they achieve that inside the organization. So, for example, there is importance of long-term vision, where it was not applicable or low to very high. So the questionnaire was very important to gather these views from the managers, and they were collected from each of the interviewees participants. So they were collected for each organization. So the results were for the first organization are presented here. So HVM1 was presenting this profile. In this pie chart, what is important to see is not so much about the numbers, the percentages directors do, but it's also about the sequence of the predominance. So the highest predominant part here is the F, which is a socializer. So these organizations had a big proportion of its value proposition as a socializer, followed by B, which is a brand manager, with 17%. And then we had E as the technological integrator. From the previous study carried out by Martinez et al., we had some theoretical high-value manufacturing compositions. And so out of the 6 that are the theoretical high-value manufacturing propositions, the socializer footprint was mostly in agreement with this sequence. So if you see, F is the most predominant, right? And then we got also involvement of E, right, to a certain extent, and followed by C. So there is some similarities there of that. For HVM1, we selected socializer as the main value proposition. For HVM2, the picture was less clear because there were a little bit less predominant, right? As you can see, there's almost an equal split between the different types of value propositions. So F is socializer, A is innovator, E is technological integrator. So following all 6 theoretical technological integrator, composition of high-value manufacturing was the closest, but by no means a unique representation, but that was the closest that we could find with match their current orientation. And we did the same for HVM3, and for this one was particularly clear that they were actually well rooted into the technological integrator high-value manufacturing proposition with a very predominant E, right, so 20%, and then followed by F and A. So we got the theoretical composition of the technological integrators is presented here with the same sequence, so E, F, and A. So for the questionnaire results, basically what emerged is that HVM2 and HVM3 can be categorized as technological integrators. So basically what they have in common is that they have this ability, the ability to customize and to produce in terms of jobbing and have a process choice. They also differentiate themselves by providing good quality, very good quality products, and they strive to provide those to the customers. However, for HVM1, we found that the main characteristic was actually a socializer. So it differentiates itself by providing excellent customer service. So some of the comments that were provided in the customer satisfaction survey were, I wish all companies were as friendly, helpful, and accommodating as the company that was taking place. So we went from individual case studies to a wider comparison, which is cross-case study analysis. So in this case, what we did is put all 3 companies on a par for the value propositions, right? So from A, innovators, to F, socializers. And as we can see, HVM1, or the white bar here, is actually the best of all in terms of socializer categorization. Whereas HVM2, as we said, it had a little bit of a problem with identifying their value proposition. And in this case, they identify mostly as an innovator. So A is innovator. Whereas HVM3, which is the black bar, is the highest of these categorization of technological integrators. So in a way, there was no doubt between HVM1 and HVM3 being firmly rooted in their value propositions. But HVM2 was a little bit changeable. So we went deeper, as we said, to understand what the different processes are internally in the organizations in order to support the strategy, but also whether there's a disagreement between them. So for HVM1, we found that the strategy was very well expressed as to provide personalized service to its customers, with the emphasis that is part of a charitable foundation. So you have here service comes first, right? Customer comes first. And the order fulfillment was also strength of the processes. So we have a state-of-the-art manufacturing, but mainly standardized and supported by carrying inventory. So in the end, if they wanted to please the customer, changes at the last minute, they could do it straight away because they were carrying inventory. So just some emphasis on those two processes that supported the HVM1 value proposition. For HVM2, the most predominant business process was on new product development. So innovative design was a strength of the company. However, it came at a high price of investment. So as we said, they were really continuously applying for funding and trying to get those projects on the go. I mean, there is so much you can do with innovative, bus for disabled people, and they were going well and above their the call to innovate for the market, although the market probably wasn't that keen to receive so many innovation. So in a way, it was the efforts were on that new product development in a way, but not quite aligned with the strategy, which still seem to be floating around the different areas. But what came out as the technological integrator classification was that they were also willing to provide total solutions to the customer. And the HVM3, yes, so they were mainly focused as a strategy to scan the horizon purposefully and to lobby the government bodies to create business opportunities. So in this particular case, they were promoting the emission zones. So at the time of the research, there was some London emission zone coming up, and they were actively trying to persuade the different regulators to impose those different levels of pollution that could be allowed, since the product was actually trying to address that problem that was going to be fitted in the vehicles that they will have. And then so you can see new product development as a strength as well of the processes. So we have excellent know-how and engineering in manufacturing of integrated solutions. So lots of engineering technological background, but they were not as good as in the area of personalized or service development, for example. But they were more specialized in the actual knowledge of how to make these particular technological solutions. So in terms of giving some benchmark, we developed also some focus groups results. In this case, we identify 7 other organizations with production managers mainly, in order to rank our different value propositions for each of the participating companies, and to give us a better view of what's happening and how they rank overall. So for example, in terms of innovation, we have the HVM2 ranks quite highly, so it's a second in the sample there. And HVM1 ranks as the less innovative in a way. Then we have obviously the actual classifications that we ended up with was technological integration, where HVM3 is firmly the first of all the samples, and however HVM2 is in the middle there, so not so well rooted into that, although it was the closest of the theoretical footprints we could align it with. And then in terms of socialization, as we have HVM1 as clearly near the top of the samples, right? So we have a third place, and really well separated from the other two cases as well, using the focus group results. So in terms of organizations using this knowledge to transfer perhaps from the current proposition, as we mentioned, 3 organizations actually fell into the customer intimacy discipline. So 2 HVM 2 and 3, they fell into the technological integrator classification, whereas HVM1 was classified as socializer. Now, organizations always look for challenges, and they were asked at the time of their research whether they will be willing to change the value proposition in future. And so we have the results that HVM1 wanted to become an innovator after being a socializer. And HVM2 would like to become a socializer after becoming technological integrator. And same for HVM3, which was a technological integrator, would like to be a price minimizer. Now, in terms of the actual transition, that will mean, as we see here, a lot of challenges. So going from hard to soft is perceived as being easier transition that say from soft to hard, mainly because you got right, so very technological dimension here, whereas here you have more a non-tangible dimension, which perhaps is probably easier to add on than obviously know how and how to do things in terms of the actual engineering that needs to be done. And also some perception between moving between disciplines. So within customer intimacy to operational excellence, it is perhaps regarded as challenging, but nevertheless, it's within the hard dimension. So from technological integrator to price minimizer is still desirable, still possible, but they always look for a challenge. Organizations are never static. So in conclusions, we can give the following. So high value manufacturing can help organizations, especially manufacturing SMEs, to increase their competitiveness. Small medium enterprises can better compete on a predominant value proposition. It's better to focus on one or almost 2, but not on everything, because that becomes problematic. And it's key to understand the feasibility and implications of moving from one high-value manufacturing configuration to another. As we say, from hard to soft dimensions, probably easier. From one value discipline to another, perhaps less easier. But yeah, it's different considerations to take into account. Thank you so much for your attention. If you have any questions,